Welcome everyone to Cinemarcade. This is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those two worlds collide. My name is Steve Gunley. I'm sorry if I seem a little distressed. I'm trying to run this podcast, but I'm but a simple farmer. I don't think I can run this podcast by myself. I need at least two samurai, I think, to come in and help me host this. But who would come help a farmer like me? Who else? What? Two strangers have arrived. Who are you, strangers?
I am a hot-headed farmer's child pretending to be a cool guy. And maybe one day I'll earn my honor.
I'm J-Ban.
Welcome, everyone. So today we are talking about the movie Seven Samurai from 1954. This is a J-Ban's pick. J-Ban is keeping that torch alight of choosing the classiest, most distinguished films that have the most bizarre loose game adaptations you can possibly come up with on that one. So J-Ban, this was your pick. Why did you choose Seven Samurai?
Well, I love Akira Kurosawa, and I love samurai films, and I feel like so many video games and movies have stemmed from Kurosawa's films that I just really wanted to do it. And I was also like, it's so interesting because we'll get into it on the game portion, but I feel like the closest adaptation is probably Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
And instead we got this sort of abomination of Samurai 20X. So I'm just like, I'm fascinated with people taking this sort of seminal film and transforming it into whatever they transformed it into for the video game adaptation.
They transformed it into something, all right. Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
I think I have never seen this movie before. As often, I was seeing it for the first time, and as I was watching it, there was so much media, whether it be games, movies, TV shows that I've seen in my life, where I was like, in my head, I was always like, oh, this is like in whatever thing, and this is like whatever. And I was like, wait a minute, this was from the 50s. Everything I've pretty much consumed in my life came after this. So all of the things it reminded me of were probably pretty heavily influenced by Seven Samurai. The concept of a somewhat ragtag group of warriors defending the innocent farm people is so common throughout. Like, there's an episode of Star Wars, The Clone Wars, that has this exact premise. Like, there's so many different things over the course of media that have pulled from these kind of concepts and ideas. And I think that to see the original was such an interesting thing. Kind of the opposite of the way a lot of people find things, which is like, hey, I'm watching this new thing. It reminds me of this thing I watched back in the day. Like, oh, this is probably I get this reference. For me, it was like, oh, this is the source of so much.
You're exactly right with that. Like, Seven Samurai is such like a Rosetta Stone kind of movie in so many ways. Like, it's one of the most wildly influential and important films ever made, just because we're still kind of feeling the ripple effects of this film. Like, all of the different innovations in the storytelling mechanics and the plotting and everything that this movie does so beautifully well is still kind of resonating, to the point where, like, we got a new remake of this last year with that terrible Rebel Moon movie. Like, this is a concept that's still very much alive, and just an incredible, important, magnificent film that is sort of hard to talk about. It's the same problem we have with Vertigo, where it's just like, okay, well, what the hell else can I, some dork with a podcast, say about Seven Samurai that hasn't already been said? It's a fun challenge, but it was also a great excuse to kind of dip back into this movie. I've only seen it once before, and it's probably been close to 20 years since I saw it. And goddamn, does it hold up so well. Let me drop some early stats and figures about this movie, and we can get into the discussion here. Seven Samurai was released April 24th, 1954. It's directed by Akira Kurosawa, and it stars, and I apologize in advance for butchering so many of these names, Toshiro Mifune, Takashi Shimura, Keiko Tsushima, Isao Komura, Daisuke Kaito, Seiji Miyachi, Yoshio Inaba, and Minoru Chiaki. So Akira Kurosawa, I think this is the only time we're going to get to directly talk about him on this show, because he's generally considered one of the best filmmakers ever made, or ever not ever made. He was made by his parents, but generally considered one of the best filmmakers alive. And Seven Samurai is perhaps his best known and best loved film. It's an action epic that's kind of left its imprint on almost every action film that's followed, and this is kind of responsible. We have a 1-2 punch of 1954 that kind of redefines Japanese cinema, because this is the year we get both Seven Samurai and the original Godzilla. So in the course of 1 year, pretty much everything that anyone knows about Japanese cinema at this point, it kind of originates here. This is introducing so many Westerners to what Japanese cinema is all about. And this was one that we'll discover was kind of, it took a while for it to find its audience over here. But Kurosawa, let's talk about him. He was born in Tokyo in 1910, and he worked his way up through the Japanese film industry. He directed his first film in 1943. It was called Senshiro Sugata. It was a popular action film released at the height of World War II. And then his second film, Drunken Angel, came out in 1948, and it was the first time he would collaborate with a very intense young actor named Toshiro Mifune. The two would go on to make 16 movies together, including the one that we are talking about today. But Kurosawa's real breakout came in 1950 with the movie Rashomon, which went on to be an international hit, and it won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival. Rashomon is an incredible movie, really groundbreaking in its storytelling mechanics. Because if you're not familiar with that movie, it's a crime being told from 3 different perspectives, totally different stories from the perspectives of the 3 people who are involved in this crime. And so it's a really interesting way of kind of examining these false narratives and like unreliable eyewitnesses, while also talking about the feudal Japanese court system. Jay, have you seen Rashomon?
Yeah, of course.
Of course. It's so good.
Well, it's so funny because I was going to ask, do you have a favorite Kurosawa film? Because my favorite is Yojimbo. I can't get past the opening. A little dog just walking through a town with a fucking severed hand in his mouth. I feel like it's one of the best opening shots shots of film I've ever seen in my entire life.
Which one? That one was remade, right? That's one of the Sergio Leone Man with No Name movies, right?
The Fistful of Dollars,
or a few dollars. I don't remember which one it is. Yeah, it's one of those.
It was based on Yojimbo.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. But then again, I do think maybe my favorite might be High and Low, but Yojimbo was my favorite for really a long time. And it's just like the filmmaking is just like it makes you like, I feel like I salivate at the pictures of like, I feel like everything about every frame is a painting, to quote to say things that have been said before. But things that I find really interesting is that Kurosawa was one of the writers on this project. And he was the editor on this project, which I'm just like, it's spectacular editing. At a time when its editing wasn't just on your computer, it was like a full body process of cutting film and shifting it around, and it's such genius editing on a film that's 3.5 hours long, but doesn't feel 3.5 hours. I mean,
that's kind of the amazing thing.
Luckily, they had an intermission because you're like,
yes, It's one of those things. Yeah, we'll get to the length because I have a lot to say about that length. But if I'm gonna say a favorite Kurosawa, like I know he's best known for his like samurai epics, for Seven Samurai, for Ran, things like that. But I really love Ikiru, which is just a very small, beautiful story about a man who discovers he's dying and like what he does with the rest of his life. Like absolutely devastatingly beautiful, heartbreaking movie. But you really can't go wrong. I mean, he had such an unbelievable run. You know, he had you mentioned
from Kenbei. The actor shows so much versatility, and Toshiro Mifune also shows so much versatility throughout his career, throughout his collaboration with Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah, but so Toshiro Mifune, he plays Kikichiro here, and he generally considered maybe the best Japanese actor to live. He's so intense. He's so he's just got so much like raw nerve macho energy, which is very, very different from what Japanese actors were kind of being encouraged to do at the time. It was more about being restrained and being kind of patient. If you there, I think the two Japanese filmmakers that people talk about in the same breath are usually Akira Kurosawa and Yasujiro Ozu. And Ozu's films are always they're very quiet. They're very bucolic. They're all about implosive emotions, you know? And so to see Toshiro Mifune kind of charge through this movie, yelling and screaming and making a fool of himself and just being this wild ball of charisma, it's really incredible. You know, for all of those like great director actor pairings that people talk about, like Mifune and Kurosawa was maybe one of the most rich.
I also found his penchants for not wearing pants very interesting. He just the amount of times that he was just like in his underwear, and then like I think by the end of the movie he's just wearing like rags as a shirt, like as a choice, like not because I have to but because I want to. It's so interesting to have somebody who sticks out so far from the rest of the characters, and doesn't really start to conform. Like even down to the very end, he's very much playing that character as like the opposite of the rest of the samurai.
Well, you have to love that their flag is just 6 circles and a triangle, you know, like where he is very much, it's like, yeah, no, where am I on this? That's obviously you. It's like, you are one of us, but you are not really one of us. Like you're your own energy. I mean, so this movie, when it came out, like this was one of those films that the Japanese media certainly thought was going to be kind of a boondoggle. It took more than a year to shoot this, which is an insanely long amount of time for 1954. It became quickly the most expensive film in Japanese history because it required such expansive sets and like so many extras and all these different props and costumes and everything like that. And the studio kept canceling funding for Kurosawa, and he would just kind of like sit back, just like, all right, well, you know, I guess I'm just going to wait until they give me my money back because they don't want to just sit here with this unfinished movie. And so eventually he won out and he was right. And the movie came out and was a massive, massive hit. I think it was the best-selling Japanese movie of that year. Again, in the year that Godzilla came out, you know, and Godzilla would wind up being just this eternal franchise for the whole country of Japan. But Kurosawa was not immediately embraced despite this popularity. A lot of critics were very dismissive of him. And a lot of it was because he was really embracing like a Western ethos in a lot of his films. When again, like to compare him to Otsu, who is like very, very incredibly Japanese, like and steeped in that entire culture. This movie is drawing influences from American Westerns and European art films. And yeah, absolutely. And that was just not really done at the time. But I think now we look at it as this is one of those movies that kind of helped make cinema sort of an international language and make it kind of one of those things that unites us, because this did eventually get a release over here in 1956, I believe. They trimmed it down by more than an hour. I imagine they took a lot of Mifune's butt out of that cut for a 1950s audience.
Give us the butt
trimmed
cut.
It down, and they released it, ironically, as The Magnificent Seven. And it wasn't until the 1960 Western remake of the film, which was also called The Magnificent Seven, came out, that the original film went back to the name Seven Samurai and the complete runtime was restored. And nowadays, I don't think you could even find that mangled cut because everybody just sort of like agrees that this is the way to go by it. But yeah, all right, let's talk about this length a little bit because you know, I don't know if other people are like me and like to watch movies along with the podcasts about movies they listen to. I don't know if people are listening or watching the movies ahead, but you know, this is a movie you really do need to set a little bit of time aside for. I was checking the list and I'm pretty sure this is the longest movie we're ever going to cover. There's one movie that comes close. Godfather Part 2 is 5 minutes shorter than this. So not enough of a difference to really matter, but This one it's a 3.5 hour long movie. And it's an incredible thing because you're going to be aware of physical time passing. You know, you are going to look out the window and see that the sun has moved. But I do not feel that time passing in this movie at all. I don't know how he does it. I don't know what kind of trick he's stumbled upon with pacing. And I don't know why everybody hasn't just ripped this off eternally, because he found the secret to just kind of making this movie feel so effortless. Like, this is absolutely a movie that could feel like an eat your vegetables movie. This could feel like, okay, I need to check this off the list if I want to be considered a serious film fan. But then you sit to watch it, and this thing is so fun. It's really, really fun.
I think
definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Justin.
I had a different experience with it because I watched it in 2 parts. I watched half of it last night, and then the only reason why I stopped watching it was because I felt tired, and then I was like, what time is it? Oh, I should go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I have work.
Yeah.
And so but otherwise, yeah, no, I thought it was a good use of pacing and stuff to really make you feel like things are happening in real time with the right cuts to like jump. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. Like, even when you look over the plot, like if you were to read a Wikipedia summary of this, like, it's not a movie that's necessarily like full of incident. You know, like some movies are really long, but it's like, oh yeah, well, there's a million subplots that they're tying together. Like, there's a whole other thing there. We're watching people go from birth to death. You know, it's a whole epic. This movie isn't really that. Like, the beats of the story can be explained pretty simply. I just, both times I've seen this, I had the same experience of like, wait, why was that movie that long? I didn't know. I just didn't notice it. You know, you think back on it, it just slides right off.
Vignettes unto themselves. Like the obvious example is when Kenbei shaves his head to save the little boy. And it's an amazing aside. And then it's just so like, it's so stunning to see this man shave his head and cut his hair, which is, you know, means a significant sacrifice in that country. And then throughout the film, he just keeps rubbing his head. He's still not used to it. And it's just his affectation. And the gathering of forces in the nearby town where they're just like, let's surprise these samurai by hitting them over the head. And it's just it's such efficient storytelling that's also such fun storytelling. Like Heihachi, the guy who cuts the wood, and he's just like, and the guy is like, he's not a good fighter, but he's so charming.
Yeah. He was actually my favorite character. I was like, every time he was on the screen, I was like, yeah, this is great. Just like a little bit of a smile came across my face.
Oh yeah.
Because he legitimately, and that they made the point, but he legitimately was the one who always kind of brought spirits up and made things give that feel of camaraderie that makes the movie not as bleak as it could have been.
Yes,
this movie is a lot of desperation, a lot of time.
Do you think so? There's an interesting part, and I'm wondering whether or not Peter Jackson just took this scene for like completely lifted it out of the movie, or the scene when Gollum is fishing and Toshiro Mifune is fishing. I just feel like it's just like Peter Jackson, did you lift that? Was that a thing that you lifted directly from this movie?
I would not be surprised. As we know, there's a very rich tradition of like Western filmmakers just completely lifting Akira Kurosawa movies. I mean, you know, a lot's been said about how much of Hidden Fortress was used to make Star Wars. You know, like so much of that went into that, and of course the Man with No Name trilogy, the Magnificent Seven, everything. I put it together like after watching this movie for the first time that like, oh, this is A Bug's Life. Like I never realized until I was watching. I'm like, oh shit, the Bug's Life is just Seven Samurai. I had no idea. Like even down to the number of bugs. I'm like, oh yeah, that's an express like reference, you know. I mean, that's so cool that it would endure in that way and like find so much. I mean, because this is it's a fantastic setup for a movie. It's a great premise because it combines a lot of different tropes that I think we've gotten used to. Like there's it's an underdog story. It's also a getting the band back together story. It's also a boot camp movie, and there's a romance in there, and there's like it's a war film. It's a brothers in arms movie, and it's also a comedy about like these wild guys and the shenanigans they get up to.
Well,
you know, go ahead.
So something that I think that's in this movie that I feel like we really neglect in a lot of movies nowadays, and again, part of that is the transition of time, is the class system and how samurai and farmers are very different classes, and that meant a lot. And I find it really interesting that there's sort of like being confined to your class and also escaping your class, like Toshiro Mifune's character is attempting to do, but also in this very buffoonery way, because he's being portrayed as being outlandish because he's trying to escape his heritage. And I think it's so interesting to see the antagonism between different social classes in Japan. And I feel like that's really, like, unless you're watching Downton Abbey, there's not a lot of commentary lately about the class system.
Yeah. I really, Toshiro Mifune is so much of the secret sauce of this movie, I think, because originally Kurosawa wanted this to just be Six Samurai, and he wanted to be very serious and wanted to focus, like you were saying, on the class structures, on kind of the more dour elements of it. And I think adding Mifune in here as this sort of wild card character just sort of it's a rising tide, right, raises all boats kind of thing. You know, I think everything in this movie benefits from the energy that he's bringing. This is a very strange character that's unlike anything else we've seen at this point, because he is a hero for sure, but he's also a liar. He's also a con man. He's also maybe insane. He's not necessarily the most reliable guy, but he does kind of earn his place and like becomes embraced by these guys who know he's full of shit. Like they know he's nuts, but they can see that there's some goodness in him, like behind all of these conditions that sort of made him. So it makes every other character look more sympathetic and strong because of their relations to him. It makes the villagers that much more appealing because of how quickly they glom onto him, and it makes him more appealing because of how much of a goofy showboat he is. He loves entertaining. He'll fall off the horse, he'll catch the fish, he's goofing with the children, you know, he's a fun guy, and that's really just helps so much.
Well, and it's so interesting the difference between Koizo going after the musket and then him going after the musket being a clusterfuck.
Yeah
I love how when Keizo goes and gets the musket, he goes and he comes back and he has it, and he's like, I killed 2 people, and you're like, okay, he went in and like did work. And then Kikichio, is that how to pronounce?
I think so. That's how I say. I'm sure I'm mangling all the pronunciations, but phonetically it's Kikichio.
He goes in and just disguises himself as one of them.
Yeah.
And then just like hangs out with the dude with the musket for a little bit. Even at one point, like reaches over, kind of holds on to it, looks it over, passes it back. And only after he gives the guy the musket back and then kind of gently pulls his sword out and waits for the guy to realize that, oh, you're not one of us.
Yeah.
Then does he go after the guy. Like he was playing a game while he was doing it. Just like very different levels of style and professionalism.
And you know, there aren't really. That's another way you could have padded out the length of this thing. Like you can justify it's 3.5 hours because we need to spend a certain amount of time with each character, getting to know exactly who they are and where they came from. We don't really get that necessarily, but we also completely understand immediately who these guys are. You know,
Yes.
they don't feel like tropes necessarily, but we know who they are. And that's kind of the benefit of having a team movie like this. And that's why that's been such a popular formula going forward, because you can easily just like put a pin on any of these guys and know who they are. Like it's the same ethos that informs everything from the Dirty Dozen to Predator. You know, like you get a bunch of distinctive looking guys, and that's kind of all you need to know to inform their character. You know, we have the brash young kid who's, you know, trying to charge in with all these samurai, and then he becomes love struck, and, you know, then you've got the grizzled lieutenant, and you've got the old man trying to make right, and you've got the comic relief. Like these are tropes that we recognize, but it just adds that much more texture.
Yeah. I think that's such a good job of showing who they are instead of telling who they are.
Yeah.
And it's the balance between showing and telling that I think this movie does really well, because if you show too much, depending on what you're trying to show, sometimes that can be time consuming. If you tell too much, that kind of robs the movie of depth. And I think the balance between showing and telling in this movie is very good.
Yeah.
You know who everybody is. You even get an idea of the villagers and stuff. One thing we haven't mentioned, which was probably obvious by this movie, it's not in English, it's in Japanese. So
Yeah, true.
You're
Yeah,
watching it with subtitles. But even then, especially as time goes on, there's less and less dialogue and more like feelings and emotions and stuff.
Yeah.
And it really, really good job of just balancing all of that and still telling an incredible story.
Well, it's so earned at that point. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Well, and it's just so much fun when he lingers on a face and you see all the emotions being played on the face. Acting, cinematography, so good.
Oh, I mean, even like I was looking for some stills of this movie to use for like social media posts, and I'm just like, oh God, every freeze frame of this movie just looks so gorgeous and so painterly and just so beautifully composed. You know, it's just kind of a joy to look at. You know, yeah, and you really feel all of these ripples. You feel this very lived in world, and that kind of is a good argument to make for making this movie so long, even if it isn't overloaded with incident. It's that it feels incredibly lived in, and the stakes feel so real, because we've spent enough time with these poor helpless people. We've seen them try to learn how to defend themselves a little bit. We've seen their trials, and we've gotten to know some of the villagers, you know, like poor Yohai, who keeps getting like smacked around and like bullied the whole time. It's just like, oh, the poor guy. He's just, you know, an old man who's trying to help, you know. And we get little bits about like the other farmers, like, you know, the horrifying scene where his wife, who had been kidnapped by the bandits and made to be a concubine, you know, she throws herself back into the fire rather than face her husband again, you know, because I read that there, you know, I read into that as like she had some shame about what she had to do with the bandits and couldn't go back. But you know, the final acts of this movie feel like it has kind of the scope of a war film, but the movie is really smart about reminding you exactly what the stakes are at here. This isn't like one army against another army. This is 7 samurai and a couple of untrained villagers against 30 bandits. That's
40.
it. We have 30 bandits. We get to watch.
40?
Is it 30?
It's 40.
Oh, it's 40. Excuse me. Yeah. But you get to watch that list. Like they literally have a checklist in the movie, and they're just kind of like marking them off. So we get to see the progress as it's going, without having to have one big like chaotic war scene. You get lots of little battles, you know, and we lose some of the samurai, and we definitely feel the stakes of that. I believe we end the movie with only 3 samurai left alive, and it is such a it's such a powerful sentiment at the end of this movie, because Kanbai is kind of the whole. He's like sort of the leader. He's the emotional center of this movie. He's the old man who's kind of agreeing to take on this mission, and he brings in all of his friends, or all of these different samurai, to help him. And he's one of the ones left standing when everything is said and done. He's undertaken this whole thing as a way to kind of regain his honor, or find the honor that he missed from his youth in the battlefield. And what he's come to realize is that there is no honor for a samurai. you know, and there is no honor in death or fighting or war, even if the cause is good. So it's this incredibly bittersweet ending where his altruistic act is kind of met with just more death.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a big thing, is that final few scenes of like the graves kind of in the background as they're watching the villagers celebrate and work, is just like, yeah, that's, I don't think anybody won. Like
No,
nobody's happy that this happened. Like obviously the villagers won and they get to survive, but like they still lost. There's still people that they will miss. There's people that are gone. 4 of the 7 samurai are dead. Such
yeah,
a powerful scene of like, and then they're just standing there not talking through most of it, just watching.
Well, I think it's so interesting because the planting of rice, the starting of the season, and it's just like it's such a beautiful, hopeful image. But when you pan back to the samurai, they're so defeated because they know that they don't belong there.
no,
That they are Ronin, they are masterless samurai, and that is their fate, to go from place to place, working for um their rice, and like completely being afloat in society. There's not a place for them.
no.
And it's so,
By saving their home, they sacrifice their home. You know, this place that they've come to think of as their home.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting that the reason why all of this happened is because their previous rice crop was taken from them by the bandits.
Right.
And so they had what little rice left, and they were using that to pay the samurai. And then they're standing here as they're about to start growing the rice crop that this time they will probably get to keep. That will bring this village back to, you know, being not hungry, not starving, back to a regular life. And they're just like, all right, well, what next? This
Yeah.
chapter's over, and we're back to square one, essentially, as the samurai.
Yeah.
They're probably happy about what they've done, about the change, the difference that they've made, but then they're still homeless, basically. They're still just going wherever.
Yeah, I mean, 2 of them, like the young man has just been completely disillusioned because he had this whole idea of what being a samurai was, and he didn't really reckon with the reality of it. And then the old man is disillusioned because he was hoping this would give him some kind of peace. And then, of course, there's just the one lieutenant who's always fine. He's just fine. He's that's why he's like such a good second lieutenant, and that's why that trope has become so popular in movies. Like every war movie after this has the gruff commander, and then he's got like the sure-handed guy who's next to him all the time, like taking his orders, and he's always going to be fine because his purpose is just to take those orders, you know. So maybe there's something to be said about that. I don't know. I don't think that's the point that this movie's trying to make, but I do love that character type in movies. Yeah, you know, you could transpose so much of this. Like this is Saving Private Ryan is kind of a same
that's
situation
very
here.
similar. Like
It's
Saving
very
Private
similar.
Ryan and Band of Brothers were
Yeah.
definitely heavily influenced by like and it's so interesting to see the romantic subplot was sort of like I feel like it was that's probably one of the weakest parts of the movie is like there's just a little bit of a like this like, oh my gosh, you're a girl.
People in movies always really fall for that. A short haircut is more than enough to just throw people off. You know, it's Yentl syndrome. You know, it's just like, oh well, they got short hair, couldn't be a broad. You know, yeah. I don't know why I made them Jersey there. I have no idea. Hey, you were the 7 samurai. What's up? Yeah. We're walking here.
It's so interesting that she ignores him. Like she just turns away from him at the end. She's like, oh well, my life's not in danger anymore. You're not hot anymore.
Oh.
Bye. Yep, I can grow my hair back. Bye. I mean, there's really so much to say about this movie and so many different levels that we could dig in on it. I think we should move on to the game a little bit because this game is insane. I think it's setting up a really interesting kind of conflict between. I've noticed this pattern. I don't know. It seems like the more canonical great movie that we watch, the worse the video game adaptations seem to understand the source material. Right? Because like E.T., Vertigo, Jaws, this one. What are else some of the really like classy ones that we've gotten to? Balls of Fury. Yeah, that was a big one. But yeah, so there seems to be kind of this strange inverse relationship that I don't really understand because it feels to me like it should be rising to the occasion a little bit, right? Like you should be thinking like, oh man, I've got this property, like this really revered property. Like the game version for the aforementioned Balls of Fury or Wayne's World or something should not be better than the one for Seven Samurai. But let's get into that. This game is called Seven Samurai 20XX. This came out March 12th, 2004. It was developed by Dimps and Polygon Magic, and it was published by Sammy, and this is a PS2 exclusive. So this is a game that came out almost 50 years exactly after the first film debuted, so it's kind of a commemorating the release of it. Now, this retelling is extremely loose. It sets this film in the distant future, and it makes it closer in tone to a 2004 anime manga series called Samurai 7, which was also a loose adaptation. However, the Kurosawa movie is kind of name-checked all over this thing. Like, if you're looking at the box art, like it's mentioning the movie. It's not mentioning the anime or the manga. It's mentioning the movie specifically. And this game has some surprising heavy hitters behind the scenes. First of all, the character designs here were done by a French comic book artist named Mobius. If you don't know who Mobius is, he contributed designs to a lot of movies, such as Alien, Tron, The Abyss, The Fifth Element. So basically some of the best produced, best looking movies of all time he was involved in. And if you ever saw the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, which was about Alejandro Jodorowsky's efforts to make an adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune, Mobius was doing all the designs for that movie. So check that film out if you want to see kind of what Mobius can do. And the music in this game was composed by Ryuichi Sakamoto, who is an Academy Award winner, one of the most influential and accomplished musicians in Japan. He was also an actor. He starred in the movie Goodbye, Mr. Lawrence with David Bowie. Like a really overpowered like people behind the scenes for this game. But despite all that pedigree, it was met largely with dismissive reviews. Most people criticized the game for being very poorly paced and kind of shallow. For people listening who can't tell, this episode is remote. I had some scheduling snafus that these two were kind enough to accommodate. So we are recording remotely. We weren't able to play the game all together in the same room. So y'all watched some Let's Plays, and I got to play a little bit of the hands-on. Got a little hands-on time with the game itself. Having played through it, it may be a little different from your guys' watching experience, but having played through this a little bit, I do certainly have to agree with the shallow part. Because something that you may not be able to tell in the Let's Play is that the controls in this game are incredibly simple. This is just a hack and slash like action game. You walk from room to room, you slash up all the enemies, you move on. You get one attack button, one guard button, and that's it. So you're not like linking together combos or something. You are pressing the square button a whole lot as rapidly as you can until everybody on the screen is dead. Was that really coming across watching the Let's Plays?
It really did come across, and it was so silly about how you have 7 samurai and you only get to play as one. And you don't,
what a missed opportunity, right?
Well,
yeah.
The character you do play as doesn't have defining characteristics other than that was too easy after killing people, which I'm just like, oh, no one in the movie says that.
No.
Like there's not that breadth of seriousness. For just a second, I can't believe I didn't mention how fantastic the score was. The score was amazing.
Yeah. it's really just like there's a weird confluence between the cutscenes in this game and then the actual gameplay itself. So the cutscenes are it's kind of telling the story. It is hitting some of the same beats as Seven Samurai the film. Like it is hitting a lot of those same beats. But the cutscenes, the world of this game seems to be very lively. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of like joking and ribaldry and things like that. And then you cut into the game, and it's just walking down a completely empty hallway, beating the shit out of 6 dozen like identical looking robots, and then moving on to the next identical looking hallway.
And I think J-Ben hit on a great point. It's a hack and slash. You play as one character out of a potential of 7-ish characters you could possibly play as.
Yeah.
You don't get to, obviously you're locked into the one. Like there's no option to play as anybody else. And that one character is ultimately pretty shallow in gameplay. So what that means is the play that I had watched was a 5.5-ish hour playthrough.
Yeah.
And if you're going to play 5.5 hours as one character with really, there's no development, the character doesn't change, you don't get new attacks or abilities or anything throughout. That's exactly what every successful hack and slash doesn't do.
Yeah.
The successful ones either have multiple characters that all play unique play styles, or you can take from like the Batman Arkham series of you're getting new gadgets, you're getting new abilities. To just have a static character throughout the whole game is not interesting.
No, especially one like J-Ban said, he really doesn't have much of a personality of his own. I mean, he's not even like just a silent protagonist. He talks, he just doesn't really say anything of interest, you know, or do anything that really makes him stand out. And so the gameplay has this mechanic. You have this special overpowered move called the Nito Ryo mode. Basically, you just tap the 2 front triggers, and you'll become like super powerful for like 45 seconds. You'll get 2 swords, you'll do more damage, and all of your attacks will be more stylish. Once that meter runs down, it takes maybe 10 seconds for it to reload, and you can just hit it again. So there's really no reason not to constantly be activating this mode, which brings to mind for me, why not just make the whole game that? Why do I need to play these little spurts where my attacks are weaker and less fun, when you can just kind of make it, you know, and as you go along the game, you'll gradually, very, very slowly like build up your health bar and everything like that. And you can reduce the amount of time that recharge takes. You know, so you're basically already removing it. So why not just remove it entirely and make it a much more fun game?
So I think it's interesting talking about this game and talking about this movie when you'd say the honest heir to this movie would be Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah.
And like I love the fact they have a Kurosawa mode. I don't know if you know this. But
I do.
And
yeah, I played it in that. Yeah.
It's just such a beautiful movie. I mean, video game, and it's just so interesting to see that, which I really feel like is an heir to Seven Samurai compared to this, which is, I do think that you could transpose Seven Samurai onto the future. I did not watch Rebel Moon.
No.
But like I feel like it's something that you could do. And I feel like there's
so
plenty
easy.
of video games like Final Fantasy or the Final Fantasy series that have the team up that have actual consequences and friendships and an actual connection between the party.
Yeah.
But this
this really did feel like, I think you hit it on the head. It really feels like warmed over Final Fantasy in its design. Like, you know, I was singing the praises of the French designer who kind of contributed character designs here, but you really don't feel it. You know, you don't get to see a lot of the really good, like clever designs. It's a very brown game. Everything just looks kind of rusty. And occasionally you'll find like populated areas where you can exchange like 2 sentences with NPCs. But it's mostly, this is just going to be shuffling you around from point to point with these little arrows. And the game is very, very easy. Like to the point where I played a good, I think 4 chapters of this game. I don't know if I took any damage. Now, you guys have seen me play video games before. You know I'm not prodigiously gifted or anything. This is not a humble brag. I got my ass kicked at Wally a couple of times. This game, I don't think I ever took any damage. If I did, I healed it up fast enough that I didn't even notice. Because you can slash, you can counter, and if you just keep going back and forth between the square and triangle buttons and then turning on your little power mode, then like you really don't need to think about it. Which is why I might throw a curve here and say, I think this is a game I might go back and finish, despite not liking, because this was really triggering something for my ADHD. This was the video game equivalent of taking like a long hot shower and having like you just letting your intrusive thoughts go. Like that was what was happening with me.
Are
with
you
this
saying
game.
It's like the Candy Crush of samurai games?
It's kind it kind of is. Like it is really hard for me to tune things out. It is really hard for me to kind of slow down and like focus on one thing at a time. This game really did that for me. I was zoned right out. I was just kind of repetitively hacking through things. I wrote like 2 comedy sketches, like while I was sitting there in my head. I'm just like, oh, I came up with 2 new premises for comedy sketches. I'm like, oh shit, I usually only think of things like this when I'm in the shower because I'm undistracted by things. So I think this game is going to be a boon ultimately for my creative output. And I need to finish it up. And it's only like you said, Justin, it's like a 5-hour game. So this isn't even that big of an investment,
I love how that's a thrilling endorsement for a game. Like it helps me
off your brain.
It's so boring. It helps me turn off my brain, or take my brain away from everything else and use it for what I want to use it for.
I mean,
Which
it's not the most ringing endorsement, but it strikes that kind of bad game sweet spot where it's just competent enough that I feel like I'm not banging my head against the wall. Like the controls work, like you're slashing through, like the game will slow down to the point of a crawl when there's too many characters on screen. Weirdly, the character that makes the game, or the enemy that makes the game slow down every single time is like the red-headed werewolf guy. Also, this game has you fighting werewolves and robots and robot monkeys. So that's a pretty different thing from the bandits in the movie. But yeah, but the game was slowing down a lot. But it stayed just competent enough that I wasn't frustrated with it. It's so easy that it's effortless, and it's just kind of dumb enough to kind of keep me into it. So like, I'm not recommending this game, but I am going to play it. I don't know how to justify that to myself, but I am going to do that.
And they also refer to people as humanoids because, why not?
Yeah. Why not? Like, because that didn't even really make sense, because aren't they just humans?
No, the humanoids are robot humans, and I don't know, like I also
those are
it was a little nod to the Omegaverse. If you don't know what that is, good for you.
Oh
okay,
God, is this the thing I was introduced to?
Yeah, okay, this came up in a chat thread once, and I still am very confused about what this thing is, but I guess we don't need to go into it, but yeah. There's a few people out there who are nodding heavily at Omegaverse and know what that is, but yeah, it is in that weird kind of fascinating zone where like, and J-Man, I think you were having the same struggle where you said like you might actually go back and finish the Vertigo game just because you don't like leaving things unfinished, and it was kind of just sort of barely competent enough that you sort of want to hate watch it in a way. Like I don't think this game is like maliciously bad. It just feels really lazy and kind of tossed off for as prestigious a license and as prestigious a crew they had working on this.
And it's so interesting. I'm like, they must have been adapting something that was already in existence, because why not just make a samurai game? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Sanjuku period, or like any period of like the latter part of the 1600s is just like a really great time period for samurai films and samurai media.
I hear that new Shogun show on FX is fantastic. I need to check that out.
Watch it. I know it dropped last night, but I was watching Seven Samurai last night.
On brand. Yeah.
I read the books when I was a teenager, and I fucking loved it. When I was in grad school, I studied a lot of the Portuguese. I had a class on the Portuguese Empire,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and so in their interactions with Japan. So it's really interesting. This very disparate cultures, um, and
Well, I want to check it out. I know Hiroyuki Sanada's in there, and he always rules. He's an
yeah,
incredible actor.
I've heard really good things about it. I'm definitely gonna watch it. And it's gonna be really interesting because like the book was so good. One hopes that the movie is similarly good. So
Yeah.
Look, as
yeah.
somebody who just watched the live action Avatar show, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that one doesn't really hold up. Yeah,
Not well. Yeah.
but hey, I hear the One Piece one is fun though.
Oh yeah.
Seems like they got that one right. But yeah, this is definitely, well, it's making me want to replay Ghost of Tsushima because it's been a little bit, and I think they released like a director's cut version of that game, which is unusual to happen for games, but like there's more
They also had
content.
DLC. Uh, I want to say Ika Island. I'm not sure.
Oh, cool.
That was supposed to be really good.
They're making a movie of that game,
That would
which
be spectacular.
I think it'll be cool. It's one of those things like where, and I was shut up with this about The Last of Us because like The Last of Us did the same thing. I was worried about like if the game is already so cinematic, like what more is a movie going to add to it? Last of Us is already very cinematic and like it made a very good show, and they found new notes to hit with that that they weren't just doing in the game. So that's made me a little bit more optimistic. It feels like filmmakers are starting to take video game properties a little bit more seriously than they used to. Like
So
maybe not a whole lot more, but
what video game would you love to see adapted? Because
oh,
there's one that I would love to see adapted, but I don't know if they could do it, and that's BioShock.
Oh, see,
BioShock's a good
there have
one.
been attempts to make a BioShock movie, a couple of them, and they never quite got off the ground, but some of them got pretty far. I would not be surprised if we see a BioShock movie at some point in the future. I think my pick would be Half-Life.
Ooh.
Half-Life just has an incredible world to it, and I love just again, it's there's sort of a lone nerd against the universe, against like forces he can't possibly wrap his head around, and you just got to keep going, so I think there's something really intense that you could make with that,
especially since Portal's in the same universe.
Yes. Oh God, I would definitely want a Portal game. I don't know how well that would translate with like the puzzle segments, but Portal movie. Yeah. Well, I want more Portal video games too. Come to think of it,
too.
Dag nabbit, give me more of those.
Elf, make a third game.
Come on, put it on my VR headset. I don't care. I'll play that. Yeah. Well, do we have anything else to say about Seven Samurai or Seven Samurai 20XX?
I just have to say that if you have not dipped your toes into Kurosawa, dip your toes. There's never a person I have made sit down and made them watch. Even my father, who hated subtitled movies, when after he watched Seven Samurai for the first time, he looked at me and his gruff manly voice says, "That was a good movie." And it was like these movies are spectacular, and it's really interesting how my brain is working. I love watching subtitled movies that aren't in English because I can't be on my phone. They demand my attention, and then you got some of the greatest work done by one of the greatest directors of all time. So definitely you can, if you don't like samurais, if they're not your thing, watch High and Low. It's so fucking good. But definitely get started on watching some Kurosawa films.
Yeah, you'd be surprised at how engaging they are. And I mean, for us, like the three of us are all pretty damn busy people, like with all the different commitments to comedy and theater and our full-time jobs and, just human interaction, like all these things that we are kind of committed to. It's pretty hard to find time to set aside to watch a movie this long, so it was so nice to just kind of like set aside an afternoon and then, like you said, Jay-Ben, just fully disappear into a movie. Like you can't look at your phone, you can't like be playing like video games or anything while you're watching this. You have to engage with it and just kind of vanish into it for a while. The movie makes it so easy on you. It's so entertaining and delightful and just kind of conveys all of human existence, you know, in this very simple, very exciting, very fun story.
Yeah, and I think I can also lend an interesting perspective on this. I don't typically like black and white movies.
Yeah.
I just because it's not that I don't like them, but it's just that I usually struggle to keep interest.
Yeah.
And then to double that up with, oh, this movie's also not in English. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a great time. I imagine most other people would also enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. Well, let's talk about our rankings then. I think we might be pretty clear in our rankings here. But each week we are ranking the movies from good movie, good game to bad movie, bad game, or anywhere in between. I think I've been pretty on the record here thinking that this is one of the best films ever made. I think it's pretty untouchable. It's kind of a masterpiece, and it's hard to deny that. And the game is hot trash, and I'm still going to play it. So make of that what you will. It is a poor quality game that I kind of like.
Look, I understand as somebody
for
who
reasons
still
that may not have
listens-
to do with the game. Yeah.
as someone who still listens to Limp Bizkit, I get it.
So
Sometimes
you
you
understand.
just need that garbage media to consume.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Great movie, bad game.
Yeah.
Great, absolutely great, spectacular classic of cinema movie. And I'm gonna say I don't feel like I don't want to say bad game, but I'm gonna say a weak game, a very weak game.
It's
Very
okay.
missed opportunity, but a hearty recommend for Ghost of Tsushima. Like very good,
Yeah,
very good
that
game.
was
Yeah,
spectacular. That's a spectacular game.
I mean, pretty unbelievable game. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We have been Cinemarcade. I haven't plugged this in a while, but you can email us at cinemarcadepodcast@gmail.com or at Instagram at cinemarcade_podcast. You can find us there. If you're in the Austin area, come to Cold Town Theater this weekend. I'm in a show called Transplantic City that I'm very excited to launch. That's coming up this weekend and every Saturday in March. What do you guys have anything going on you want to plug? We haven't really done that very often, but we're recording this the same week, so like we have a minute here.
I mean, I'm not up to anything this weekend.
I'm in the show at the Hideout at 4 p.m. This Sunday.
Hell yes.
Yeah, that's boy, is that the Lord of the Rings based show?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. I'm always so behind on which show's running. But yeah.
Well, so this week, of course, was a J-Band's choice, and traditionally, the seasons dictate that the next episode must be a Justin's choice. Justin has not told us what his choice is going to be,
unless J-Band initiates a series.
Yes, it just takes a whole month for Aliens, which I appreciated because I love Aliens.
Yeah, honestly, they were great movies.
That was a good month
before.
Yeah.
So I think I already know what I'm gonna pick.
Okay.
And I think I already know what the results are going to be of this.
Oh boy.
So as a kid, right, I read a lot of young adult novels, and one in particular about a young kid being recruited by the English Secret Service or whatever. The Alex Rider series was one of my favorites. And so there is a movie that they made in 2006, Alex Rider, Operation Stormbreaker. Also apparently had a video game.
I own the game sealed in the box.
I have not seen the movie. I have not seen the game. I can only guess based on the adaptations of many of the properties of my childhood during that era that it's not going to be great, but we'll see.
Should I read the book before I watch the movie?
I mean, honestly, if you want to, I still have a copy of it, and I might read it ahead of time. I don't think
I
I
will.
finished that series. I think I got almost to the end and then trailed off. So
This has to be one of the hardest pivots that we've ever had from episode to episode, where we're going to go from talking about Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai to Alex Rider Operation Stormbreaker, a spectacular box office bomb at the time of release. A movie, yeah, no, I have never seen it. I have no concept for what this series is.
I've never heard of this, and it's so rare for me to have never heard of something.
Yeah, no, I know about it just because I own the game, and because I think I saw the game on a shelf. Well, we can get into it next week, but I saw the game on a shelf. I'm like, I have no idea what this is. It looks like it's based on a movie. Oh shit, it's based on a movie. I'd better grab this. So yes, tune in next week. We were going to find out about Alex Rider Operation Stormbreaker. I'm very excited to see what the hell this is.
yeah, I pulled up our spreadsheet. I scrolled down a few. I saw it and was like, that's it. I don't have to scroll any further.
I gotta say, you two really just kind of implicitly understood the assignment for the J-Van's choice and Justin's choice this week. I love getting surprised like this, and man, you both definitely shocked me with your choices. So good on you. We will see you next week for Alex Rider Operation Stormbreaker. We'll see you then, y'all.